I was reflecting on, you know, the journey I've taken. So I think those starting off, those things really kicked off when I was with Kensington and Chelsea. And so Terry Alifat was my boss, and just her strategic kind of incisiveness was really important. I mean, Kensington and Chelsea, there weren't huge development opportunities. There wasn't an exciting high multi-million-pound program to run. But the issues were really, like, it was all about those balancing issues between the community, very rich, very poor, mix in very close proximity, those issues around design, those issues around how do you intensify sensitively within an area that's got, you know, all that conservation heritage issues, plus you know, all of the other things that people value about the area, and yet you want to deliver more homes. So really great place to learn those principles, if you like, in a microcosm of. Then I moved to Greenwich, and it was on a massive scale, completely the opposite end. Greenwich Peninsula, you know, 14,000 homes to be master planned and delivered. But having that same way of thinking, and thinking strategically, thinking of those specific issues on a big scale, and then on an individual plot scale when you're dealing with a particular development within the overall master plan.
What do you think makes a good officer in regeneration, in housing, in planning?
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, again, it's partly what I was saying about what makes a good partnership. It's very much about awareness. So for me, it's about looking at the big picture, looking at the context, and asking the right questions, and listening to what comes back, and putting that picture together, and then knowing where to act and knowing what to influence. And so a lot of that, you know, you learn through trial and error, you learn through mistakes, but it's getting that knowledge through talking to people who've done it before, looking at what's happening in other places, and seeing where those comparators really resonate with what's happening in the place you're working. But yeah, I think for me, number one is that sense of commitment to the place. So, you know, for me, I've worked in places for a long period of time. I've come in as a consultant interim manager over the last few years, and worked for a much shorter period of time. But I've always got that sense of a commitment to the place, because I think that's, you can't do the job otherwise. You have to understand what the place is about, what the community wants, needs, and commit to that, be part of that.
So what was it in your upbringing, in your sort of, you know, your really early years as a youngster, as a student, and so on, that influenced and shaped how you feel a good officer goes about their work, and also your views on growth and development and what it's for, and how to go about it?
I'm not sure that I've reflected enough about that far back to answer that really convincingly. When I was a student, I was in Brighton, and I was living in the private rented sector, as a lot of students were in Brighton, still are. And I got very involved in working with the student union to advise students who were having difficulties with their private landlords. So, I mean, that was really what led me into a career in local government and housing, because I was campaigning against Brighton Council, and then I kind of, the penny dropped, and I kind of realised, well, actually, if I was on the inside, I could change these things that I thought weren't working for people. Yeah, I mean, that's where I ended up. But that's not really about growth. That's more about how I got into local government.
That's interesting. I mean, you studied, was it urban studies? What were you reading?
I did urban studies, which it was one of those names of courses that you got in the 60s, which you wouldn't have it now because it doesn't really exist. I mean, the idea was that you could study the urban environment and all the players and all the processes and understand how things work and change. But actually, when you look at the literature on this, you'll find that urban sociology quite quickly got to the point of realizing that there wasn't an urban environment, there wasn't an urban set of processes that were distinct, and that it was all linked in with the wider national political processes. And in fact, there's a theory that basically says we're all urban, whether you live in a village out in Sussex or you live in central London. This is an urban society, and it's the way the society works, and all, if you look at all the things around supply chains and investment and everything, it's all based on that way of seeing the world.
So how far back can you trace that interest? I mean, you were interested enough to pick up on urban studies as a theme, as a topic you wanted to get further into, to study at university. So where did that interest come from?
So, I mean, the interesting thing would be, from a very early age, I was fascinated by maps, and I used to when I was drawing, I used to draw maps of imaginary places. So that was one of the things I used to love doing. Yeah, I mean, I at one point, I remember probably 15, 16 years old, I said I wanted to be a town planner. I don't think I really knew what town planners did, but I liked the idea of that. And when games like SimCity came along, I just loved spending hours doing that. So yeah, I think it really goes back to those times.